Okay.
Had to behave.
Yeah, for the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, we allow some topics from the floor that are not on the agenda, limited to 5 minutes.
Chairman Carey, Steve Kosky, Citizen St. Helens. I see you guys all again. Just trying to jumpstart again the architectural standards, just trying to get that moving forward. I'm willing to help volunteer for any subcommittees you guys might want to do on that. And the reason is this, the main, we'll recall Roy Kim's thing about when we were gonna potentially sell all of our property, the 22 acres in development, to a single developer. One of the big stumbling blocks there was no properties for sale to anybody in St. Helens. He wanted to basically be the landlord of the 22 acres. But one of his things was, why is it that you can't free up some of this property for sale? And his thing was, I want to control everything. I want to make sure there's consistency in the building. I want to make sure there's consistency in the quality. And I've done a little bit of investigating. I've talked to Jacob about some of the areas that are being developed down there with the roads that are being put in. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for smaller development to come in with some local people to develop, 200 by 200 lots, 300 by 300 lots. Get some local people to build smaller development, maybe put in 10 million, 5 million. There's some people that have the wherewithal to get this thing started that are local. We can get some housing going down here. We can get some quality building going down here. And I think one of the issues may be, if I put $5 or $10 million into a building, how do I know the next guy isn't just gonna come along and not make it up to the kind of standards that I have now built my building? And also I need to sell, condominium. I'm gonna have Michelle Langdon come in and help me out with this one. I've been so busy with work. She's gonna come in and help me out. She thinks there's a market for 550 to 750 range. We had 100 units to sell in 550, 750 range. She thinks that it would all sell within 60 days. So, and if somebody wanted to buy something in St. Helens in that range, there's really not a lot to buy. If I have that kind of money, if I'm making pretty good money with, I'm talking working class people, dual income people. And you can afford that kind of a property and you want to live in St. Helens, there's just not a lot of choices here. So we have a waterfront, the demand is there, but I think one of the issues may be, how do we make sure we can attract developers to try to invest their time and money? And so I know you guys are starting down the road on a couple other things, but greatly encouraging the planning commission to pick up the architectural standards, to take the already adopted kind of commercial architectural standards and try to expand those out, work with Jacob and around here, willing to help. And I think it would be a good thing to get going, get on the books, study other other jurisdictions that have put in architectural standards in Oregon and have made those stick. So, thank you.
Most, have a copy for the floor, not on the agenda. You guys feel about the minutes?
I have a correction on page 4.
What's that?
That's on the third line. It says she said she did speak to Aaron Salisbury. It should read, she said she would speak to Aaron Salisbury. Main Street and see if they are interested in help.
As much as I like Erin. I don't think she's the Erin Salisbury.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Correct, Any other corrections? Okay, do we have a motion to accept the minutes with these two corrections?
So moved.
Seconded. Right. I will vote.
I was here last time.
I,
Aye, it's done.
it wasn't hard.
All right. Time is now 6:05 PM. Public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. Subject of this hearing is a request for a variance. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 305 on map 4N1W4AC. The applicant is Russ and Mary Hubbard. The owner is the same. Because quasi judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we'll take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias in this matter? None? Any member of the commission? Right. Any member of the commission wish to declare any ex parte communications or site visits? Do anyone from the audience object to the ability of the commissioner to make a fair decision? Say none. All right. Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, or rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decisions. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to City Code and ORS 197.7975. The following is a list of applicable substantive criteria for this decision. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.108.051A through E. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulation which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Boards of Appeals on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Staff?
Thank you, Chairperson. So this is a variance, and the variance is for a particular standard that applies to multifamily development. When I say multifamily development, it basically means 3 or more units on a parcel. So apartments is a more general term. And we have a standard that talks about the distance of walkways from windows. And there's a certain number, there's a certain distance that is supposed to be, and it's a little greater distance if it's a living room on the other side of the window. In this case, the variance is a request for that number to be 0 feet. That separation to be 0 feet. Now this project should be familiar for some of you who have been here for a number of years. This was something that the Planning Commission approved back in 2020. And we rose that issue at that time. And ultimately, the final plan that came through, there were 2 windows of question. And this is an excerpt of the site plan. The 2 of question, there's little stars. There is a 5-point star. That's the variance request, and then a 4-point star. That was another window that we identified as a potential issue, and that was omitted. And this provision pertains to window walls within, the window has to be within 8 feet of grade. Obviously, we don't have a lot of people that are taller than 8 feet height, and so at that point, it's kind of a moot issue. from a livability standpoint, which is kind of the essence of that standard. And so it's really just a question, are you cool with that window being immediately adjacent to a pathway? There's a floor plan in there with a couple of arrows showing those old window locations in the plans, and then there's the photograph showing the window in question. It's not terribly huge. It does provide a westerly view, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a standard, and it's a standard that we have to address. The project is in construction. Something I kind of noticed it. And I brought it up to the developer. The idea was to get it kind of worked out before they're asking for final month or so, rather than it being a surprise. Nobody likes surprises in development, even though they can occur. We like to try to reduce those as much as we can. So that's why we're here tonight on this issue. As usual, in a variance, we have 5 standards to look at. Now, I should note that one of the things that is proposed by the applicant is for the window to be opaque. I don't know if that's a mirror finish or something to where you cannot look in. But you can still look out, assuming that would be the intent. It does serve people. It's not like it's a public sidewalk, which would have a lot higher numbers. And then it was noted that it was an error by the design professional. That's on there. So really, it's, you agree with it or not? And then is an opaque window enough as proposed by the applicant, or do you think there should be anything in addition to that under the circumstances? That simple.
Why does it need to be, what's the purpose of the rule? Why does it need to be an opaque window?
Well, it doesn't need to be opaque. The rule is to have that distance.
I mean, if it's a proposed solution, then why, what difference is the opaque?
Well, and
People keeping people in, keeping people out, what?
I assume it's a, you don't want people just looking through your window,
it's anti-peeping Tom.
Oh.
Or
in which case it being opaque would seem to address that pretty well.
yeah, then someone could just fix their hair and
A
then.
safety issue, like, not concerned about a safety issue, it's more of just.
It's a livability thing,
Okay.
yeah.
Is the path between those 2 buildings the same distance as it was originally proposed? In the photograph, it looks really skinny, and I just didn't know if that separation.
I believe so.
And that's not a change in code, that's not, there's not a requirement. The buildings have to be?
There is, it was considered one building because of the unified architectural feature on the front. The term I cannot think of, but it's the metal. Look like bridge work, I think it was a bridge. That's a connection that makes it one building. Which is not clear on the plan. If you were to see the building in person, you would see that.
Never by a number.
Any other questions of staff, not deliberate? Questions?
Is it my understanding you're already gonna put rain glass in it? I guess it's a question for us.
Yeah, it's a question for the applicant.
I do have a question. Sometimes the buildings are close together and you don't want a window to a window who looks straight into the other house. This is to a walkway, the rule you're talking about, right?
Right, yeah.
Because I noticed that it's offset from the building. It's actually not looking out at the building.
Yeah.
So the other one was illuminated, was looking into
At least it is a window that lets light in.
And the other, window is gone.
That's correct, yeah, the other one. Yeah, so it would. you would be able to kind of see it on the right, if it was there. So that one was omitted. It's the one more in the foreground that was left on the plans.
Okay, if there's no other questions of staff? The applicant, do you have a presentation?
Covered.
Only other?
I miss you guys. Okay. Well, explain pretty much how it went.
So essentially what had happened is we had spoken with Jacob prior to, I think, final approval of building permit and someone lost in translation that Lower Columbia Engineering was the fact that neither window should have been there. We did one, they were both were on the plans that were approved through the building department. I omitted the one that is no longer there because of a fire code issue. There was two on the plans. The one, like I said, the one that was removed was because we would have had to have gone with a very costly, basically fireproof window. So it made physical sense to remove that one, all the while leaving the other for natural light and to, enhance that unit as much as we could as far as natural light goes. So
I wonder, would it make any difference if the window was, not to make anything complicated, but, a lot of new homes are getting those, what do you call those lateral windows that are up high? So people can't peek in, they don't open and close, but it does let light in.
Clear story,
What do you call those?
clear story window?
No room for the walkway.
And there's a,
Yeah, it doesn't open and close, it's just a light thing.
My question to Jacob would be, the code says vision through the window. I'm not trying to get around anything, I'm just asking. You have a big glass there. Is that? Would that be any? See through the.
The code really doesn't get into, it just says window wall.
Yeah.
So technically, if you are proposing mirrored windows, it would still apply. I think the legislative intent is normal windows. My understanding, the opacity was a potential solution. Under the circumstances.
And to the fault of our engineer, it was self-imposed basically, so. It got in there, normally I wouldn't order another $500 window.
Is this a fireproof window that you do?
so that location was required to have the separation because of the nature that the buildings jog. So there's a fire separation only goes to the face of the building to your right there.
It's so close. So. To the clear story window question though, it's if a window wall is above 8 feet. So it's not necessarily the window.
Yeah, the window has to be within the 8 feet of grade. So if it's
The wall has to be within 8 feet of grade. Doesn't say window.
Yeah, the two portions of the code read differently. I don't know if that's intended. Roman numeral 2 has the windows separated by 10 feet, whereas Roman numeral 1 has the walls separated by 8 feet.
Yeah,
It's weird.
you have to read. That is. So 1 and 2, the difference is whether or not it's a living room or not.
Yeah.
You have to go back to C on 1. Driveways, parking lots, and common or public walkways shall maintain the following separation for dwelling units within 8 feet of the ground level. So I did misspoke about the window. It's the dwelling unit itself has to be within 8 feet of ground level. These being ground level units, they're there. So, yeah, thank you for beating that up so we can get that information out there.
The proposal I mentioned to Jacob is we would take opaque glass and stop it in on the inside of the window, so architecturally you'd still see a window there, but you couldn't see through it. There would be light coming in, which is great for anything in this climate. So we'd still get the light coming in, but you wouldn't be able to see through it. And there's a myriad of different opaque glasses, there's rain glass, there's all sorts of things, you know, you can put there to not see through it. So that was my answer to this problem.
Keeping the window, then you'd be installing some kind of glass
On
in.
the inside, so architecturally it looked like a window there, but no way you could see through it.
It goes into the kitchen and living room area, something like a bedroom or bathroom.
Yeah, it's living area. It's adjacent to the kitchen, I think, essentially.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant?
Did the number of units change from the original proposal? Okay. Reading it at home the other night, I was like, did this change? Trying to make sure.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant? Do we have any testimony in support of the application? Next forward. Step back, I guess. Need to come back.
Steve Toskey, Citizen St. Helens. I'm here to strongly support the application, which is to allow a variance to reduce the distance between the windowed wall and walkway for a dwelling unit, which is part of the mixed-use building under construction. That's a requested variance. I think that the applicant has met all the criteria. And I think it should be granted as requested. While the applicant has stated that willing to put some kind of opaque window in there, I don't think that should be a requirement. I think if a tenant or somebody wants to put some kind of opaque plastic on there, that they could easily do that at very little expense. One thing that I see the way that our development code is headed is much more crowded quarters. We're getting closer and closer together all the time. And I think one of the most important things for anybody living in any place is light and air into a unit. And I think if somebody wants more privacy, they can put curtains up. They can put their opaque thing in there. I think the idea of making these windows a wall would be a horrible thing to do to the applicant. And I believe that all of the criteria are more than met, as pointed out by staff. 17.108.0501A, livability issue. This is an extreme livability issue. As we get tighter and tighter, closer and closer, having windows that can open, having places you can see out. It's up to you whether you want to prevent somebody from, if livability is met. There are special circumstances that are unique to this property. It's a beautiful property that's being developed in that area. That needed to be in tight quarters in order to make it happen. And that see the use proposal be the same as the use under the code. It doesn't change the use under the code. Existing physical, this is D, existing physical and natural systems will not be adversely affected. It will not adversely affect anything. And it's a hardship which is not self-imposed. It sounds like the applicant intended to not put the window there, but it was in the plans, and then they've gone through the time and expense. These are very expensive, high quality development. Quality in every single aspect. And I think that criteria is met as well. So I would urge the planning commission to approve the variance as requested, meeting all the criteria, and in particular livability, and leave it up to the applicant and the future tenants whether they want to cover the windows up and how. Thank you.
Any others? Well, nobody else here. So, does the applicant want to rebut the? Give you a choice.
Such nice things.
You talked about the trellis that we have going in on the front, that's the columns. Yeah, that, as you see, the columns are standing there, and those are from a building in downtown Portland on, I think it was Front Avenue. They're over 150 years old. And I salvaged them from that project down there. And they've been in my warehouse for years, and finally I go, bingo, that's where we're gonna use them. But they're all, if you come up, take a closer look, you can really appreciate it, because those are all hot rivets holding them together. And that's when they built bridges, and there's interesting detail on them. We're going to put galvanized beams between each one, and then galvanized metal trellis going back to the building. And eventually there'll be some grovies going across the top of that. You mentioned we're gonna attach those two right there that you see to make the building continuous, but we're not doing that. I don't know, in one set of plans it was talked about putting that there. But building department looked at this as one building anyway, because we had to build to a higher code value because of the commercial corner. So the whole project got built to higher standards for code, fire code. So I just want to clarify that you mentioned that piece will be going through, and then hopefully didn't cause any grief with you. Didn't think that was a thing that made them tied together, but anyway, I wanted to explain that. So,
Thanks for explaining about the columns.
yeah,
Yeah, that's very cool.
I put a lot of effort into doing those, and Holly's a certified welder, so he's remanufactured those with new bases, and then he's welded the beams ready to go. They're in the galvanizers now, and we'll be putting those on pretty soon. And get that front done, and then he's been welding up all the steel decks in the back, so we had a little setback with our sewer line. To dig up again after we built it once, we had to dig it up, so that was an issue with everybody involved in the city on that. It's one of our typical problems in business development work. But yeah, so that's pretty much it.
You hoping to be done?
Well, that first it was the freeze, then the sewer issues got extended it for 2 more weeks with that issues, and so we're a couple months away. Yeah, cabinets are going in now, flooring goes in next week, so the interiors are done basically. It's just the exterior, and then we'll be waiting for a little better weather for all that paving that's out on the parking lot. So the building's basically done, it's all electrified. Another feature we're gonna have that we designed in is we have the lights that are on the building now that come on at dusk and off at dawn. So they're the walkway lights and everything. And then we will have LED spotlights shining down in the center of all these columns. So coming down the road should be fairly spectacular to sort of see those lit up. It's hopefully just gonna be a really fine light coming down and celebrating them. That's how we're gonna go on. You guys selected, you've gone through the selection process for.
Talk about that today.
You are, okay. Can I plug someone?
What?
Can I plug someone?
Oh, we've already done the interviews.
Oh, you have, okay, good, well, see what you choose.
What's the cost difference between putting some opaque glass in there and removing the window?
Well, first of all, throw away the cost of the window, the cost of the framing, cost of the trim, cost of the siding, the cost of rebuilding it all, cost of painting, sheet rocking and all that, and insulation. So for me, I go not a cheap route, but the easy solution. And I just think that would code's a little not clear on that, and I assume it's vision because that's why you don't put a window there.
Yeah.
So I assume the opaque will stop the vision and let light in, which I think is always a good idea. Thanks.
Any other questions of the applicant? Here for rebuttal? All right, thank you.
Looks great so far.
All right, Commission, have any final questions of staff or? Okay.
We have
No, there's no one.
Hearing no further questions from the commission and no further responses from staff, the public record is closed and this matter is returned to the people for deliberations and oral discussion, decision.
The reason I was asking about the cost of removing the window is because in the past we've talked about unreasonable, in different hearings, unreasonable cost, and to me, it would seem like a couple $1,000s to remove the window, and I think that's unreasonable, and I like the solution of the opaque glass, so I don't think we should have them removed.
But the mistake is self-imposed. It's not like the window came here from outer space and created this building. My thing is always, as a planning commissioner, we govern from a rule of code. And if the codes never mean anything, if it's always a variance, always an allotment, always this much closer, this much farther, this much taller, do the codes really mean anything? So that's my thought process, and from a personal vantage point, I've lived in multifamily where there was a window next to a walkway, and where you always felt like, where you always felt that way, and you think, well, you want light in and stuff, and we put the opaque stuff on there, but still, you just, at night, you turn on the lights in there, and it's like, when your window is like right there, because you see it next there, but when you look at it, it's really right next to that other door. So it's like comings and goings and stuff, so you think about that visibility, and people's privacy.
A couple thoughts on that, though. It seems to me like it would, if they're putting the opaque glass on the inside and lights coming through, it'll look no different than a LED light on a ceiling. It just doesn't look like a window anymore. It's just letting light through. And my other thought is, in every room when you're building, you make 1,000 different decisions, and we're all human. And if you only miss one thing and the project is quality beyond that, then I think that we
Luckily, it's not in a historic district.
I would split those two issues. So first, in terms of if whether a opaque glass variance would make sense, I think it addresses the core problem, which is visibility. And having lived in a similar situation, it's having a window you can see through is uncomfortable. But beyond that, certainly the city at some point made a legislative decision. They wanted a rule against visible windows within that space. I feel like while we might vary to come up with an opaque solution that would eliminate the visibility issue, changing the fundamental legislative purpose, that's outside our scope. As for the self-imposed issue, I don't feel like I have the context to know whether self-imposed at this point extends to what hired firm or subcontractors, and whether there's some sort of vicarious assignment of responsibility there or not. And I don't know if we have any practice on that. We're just sort of
Right, well,
plugging it back.
sometimes we use that self-imposed with, like, when the grade is extreme and they have, or it's a difficult, and that corner is a difficult build a lot. Because of the grade and the rock and all that stuff, so that's always something that's stressed upon them, that they didn't sign up for that
Right.
cliff. But I just always think about that, because as a citizen that's lived here forever, I look at houses that are built in our community, and it's like, what codes allowed that to happen? How does that happen where the side of a house is toward the street? And that gets back to architectural standards, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to pause for a minute and have that conversation about rules and no rules, and want to make sure that we're being consistent in how we apply things.
Well, I think the rules state the rules and you build to that, and then they come in for a variance if they're in a is the other than what we're here for.
Yeah.
So it's not, it was allowed, it was allowed by us. So we take the responsibility. I personally think, an opaque window would solve the problem for me. As long as it isn't a matter of walking by and breaking a window as you're walking by. Then it'll still be a window, so it'll be broken, right? But with the livability for light and privacy, then I think that it's a good compromise. Opaque window.
We could look at it as is. I think that treatments can be done after the fact if necessary, but I think they'll bring glass or things as well.
So does someone want to make a motion? I mean, it's not like we're all completely in agreement on, or are we in opacity? Opacity? What is it?
I'm in favor of granting the variance with the condition that something opaque is put glass there.
Okay. Okay, how do you vote? Your turn.
I know.
Oh.
I.
You? The,
And then, motion for,
So moved.
I'll second.
how do you vote?
I.
Let's say I get things there. His recommendation by the commission will be considered by the city council at a future public hearing. And the city planner will bring back written findings for approval. Figure the over there before that. So. The final written decision of the planning commission will be appealed to the city council. Notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified. If you comments to the appeal, then I will be included in the notice. Why would this be appealed to the city council? It's just a recommendation.
It's not a recommendation. I don't know why, but. You got an if statement?
Oh, go to 19, if the planning commission has a final decision. Okay. We have a final decision. Okay, so that can be appealed. I got lost in the script, sorry. Thank you for checking. Okay. Thank you. Forward to the completion. Okay, now we're to the planning commission interview committee recommendation.
okay, so. Got time for Mark to step out. But he'll be back soon. So the planning commission interview committee. Which this time was Counselor Gunderson and Commissioner Shoemaker. They interviewed two candidates. And they felt both were qualified, and I'll let them have an opportunity to speak. But we got to talk about the circumstances. And we got to pick on Russ Lowe as well. So he said that so calmly. So right now we have one vacancy and we have one anticipated vacancy. Because Russ wants to go on his sailing adventures or boating adventures. So part of this depends on what you do. And so the scenarios are, so right now we have a vacancy. You've stated that you could at least continue to attend through April. So couple more months. And so part of the equation is, do you want to resign now? So we have two openings, or do you want to resign after April. And if your choice is the latter, then I think this group has the decision of, okay, who would you recommend now and who would you recommend as the replacement for the anticipated post-April meeting resignation?
Put the question on you about what's best for the commission. What would you like me to do? Granted, I won't be here past April through September, but if you'd like me to stay until April and resign at the April meeting, I can do that.
Yeah, and this is probably. I mean, I'm fairly neutral on it.
My feeling, and I appreciate your work here, is that we have a lot of work to get started. And so I think that sooner is better for the commission, because then we can move forward with committees and proactive committees and things. That's my only thought.
I was just surprised that you weren't standing up and walking out all the way.
Is there any other terms coming up?
Year,
I don't have,
two at the end of the year,
Which two?
me and, well,
Just curious if we had terms that were coming up too.
Get that answer while you guys talk about the candidate.
I think your term ends because you were filling in.
That could be. Yeah, that sounds right.
This sounds terrible. I don't even remember who you took over for. Is that bad?
Oh, no, not for us.
For.
David
Oh,
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
and
The bees, yeah.
Who is it?
yeah.
So I thought Roosevelt.
Yeah.
next up is. That help you, Jenny?
Yeah, I was just curious if there was something, sooner than later. But it's not till the end of the year. Got time.
What's December?
I would say whatever would work best for you. I do think there's some utility in having it all at once, but if, it's better for you to stick around. Stick around.
With the two that you had, or did you like them both equally?
I thought they were both great candidates.
I would, it'd be a coin flip for me. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I would probably lean more towards, is it Bonnie? Brooke. Just from her PUD experience, just if you were wanting to get somebody in now. And what was it?
Scott Jacobson.
Scott,
Yeah.
they were both solid.
You could talk about
She was,
the two.
the field engineer is the field engineer for PUD and seemed to have quite a bit of construction experience, and I think that's really helpful here. And then he is a retired archaeologist and has a strong interest in preservation. And it's his second application. We interviewed him in the past. And I thought this time he interviewed very well and was more engaged, and we got to know him a little better and think he's a great candidate too, so.
And so the other element that we should probably put forth on the table. Scott Jacobson does serve on the Parks and Trails Commission or Parks Commission, whatever it's been renamed. And if you were to recommend him to the council, there is a provision in the committee and commission rules that says individuals appointed to one city board, committee, or commission shall not serve on another one during the term of their appointment, provided that the council may waive this limitation if it's in the public interest to do so. There is one person, Lynn Pettit, who is on the Parks and Trails Commission and the Library Board, and so there is someone that has that. So your recommendation for Scott should be accompanied, at least in my opinion, by a recommendation that would be in the public interest for him to be on those two committees, just to provide that much more fuel to the council if it becomes a juggling thing for them.
And he did say he is retired now and he has plenty of time, so that settled that part for me anyway.
Seems like those don't conflict with each other, their commission.
Actually, kind of possibly complement each other.
Yeah, I think the only reason it wouldn't be in the public interest is if the Parks has a line of people beating down their door to join the commission, but I'm guessing that's not the case.
I think they are already having a vacancy to fill or just fill the vacancy, so.
And I think it would be in the public interest to have him do both, yes.
So,
I didn't hear any other opinions on whether you want me to do it tonight or in April.
I mean, what Jennifer said, I kind of agree with that reasoning, that with, as much as we, are wanting to get started, getting the two new members, on, sooner rather than later would probably be a wise thing.
Yeah, it's still steps. I mean, it's
What's
just,
their personality, stay here, but,
well,
Can go.
I can see the value of having some experience, given it long, but more experience than a new person, as long as we can have it, but if you're talking about a longer term project that needs to get started and we need that continuity, then.
we've been short people for a while.
Yeah.
One person or another, we haven't been at full capacity for a while.
And I think that's prevented us from really getting going on the architectural or proactive items, so that's why I'm suggesting that. Let's go ahead and get started.
Hearing three and then saying do it now, right? So that'd be majority. I can do that tonight then.
Well, you had warned us
I did.
that you needed to go, but you're willing to stay until we found somebody else. So that's kind of, they told us they found somebody and it's okay. You're
very
not.
much appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Do you need it written?
Willingness.
Well, I mean, you can just state it. I think that would be,
For the record.
I don't know if it,
On the record, at the end of this meeting,
We appreciate your service.
And your experience.
We're sorry we don't have cookies.
that's all right.
We have cake.
Actually, you're here about.
I've never seen a planning commissioner as dedicated to showing up at 2 AM and
Really on the
time for 6 months. Like crazy.
It's hard to do, to be honest with you. Especially when we did the Comstock meeting.
Oh my gosh.
And you had to leave because you had to go to work later, and you were up all night.
Well, it's already an hour and a half late for work.
Yeah, that beats some records in my book.
now in alignment with the activity that has occurred in this room, I think it would be appropriate for you to throw a tantrum on your departure.
Thinking enough of that.
You can go out there and yell at us a little bit. That'd be good.
Show up every week and berate you if you want.
That'd be
You'll
good.
have fun.
I
Beginning of every session.
Tonight, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so that takes care of the Russell situation.
You're a situation.
Now, hopefully, that means you're going to recommend both of the people to the council
Yeah.
for the representation.
Yes.
And that should be by motion.
I move that we accept the recommendation of the two individuals to fill the vacancies.
Seconded.
Did you vote?
Aye.
I think you can vote.
Aye.
Aye.
And does that include the public interest provision? And that could just be
Yeah, sure. Motion, right?
Double I.
So will that be on the council agenda then to?
yes.
And then they'll
I
be
know.
on the next planning.
Kathy, today I would let her know in the morning, since she is aware that that's an issue and. Yeah, it'd be for the next one. That way, they can be appointed
Come in March.
next week and, yeah,
21st for March
in
12th.
time for March, planning commission and the joint meeting.
That's good timing, actually. And Russ, if you had a recommendation, should have told them months ago, we've had this advertisement out for a long time.
I just found another guy today, but,
We kept re-upping it, trying to get
Yeah.
candidates.
Think it's March 13th. I think it's the day after the planning commission.
So it's 2 nights in a row.
Anniversary,
I'm gonna miss both of those.
41st.
Oh, you're gonna be out next meeting?
Yeah, I'll be in Detroit.
You got that.
All I can say is UAW.
Okay, Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Seeing you.
You had way too much fun at this council, let me tell you.
Well, you didn't have to leave.
Keep it calm.
Don't slam the door on your way out.
Historic Resource Review, are you ready for that?
Yep, that's me.
Okay. Well, I was waiting for Jacob to get done writing.
Yeah, let me just share my screen so that people at home. See.
I think you can tell me on this one and on top.
Yeah, so I think as far as the proposal on this, it's probably as simple as the variance proposal. So back in December, you all reviewed a pretty large renovation project for the John Dunn School. The county is obviously recommending that for their government administrative offices. And this is a locally designated landmark, and so we had a public hearing to review the historic resource criteria. And I don't know, 3 weeks or so ago, the applicant, Emmerich Architects, reached out and mentioned that they discovered some really poor soils in the rear of the building, which required remediation. And when they were remediating that soil, they had to remove the staircase in the back. They kept it, they salvaged the metal staircase for reapplication later. And now they'd like to request just permanently removing that staircase. They state in their application that it no longer serves an egress function or a functional purpose. And I'm gonna pull up some photos. Oh, I passed them.
That's what we mean by poor soils. Were they polluted or?
That's a good question. I am assuming that they were not suitable for their foundation work. But
Okay.
yeah,
They wouldn't put-
probably had certain compaction requirements. This is me making a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they just weren't meeting that. So there's probably some
Structurally sound.
settling, yeah. So here's what the look like today. So here's with the staircase removed. There's still a landing here. Their proposal involves restoring the roof still, so this landing would stay and there would be a new roof. That was the same in the original HRR approval back in December.
So it's just the staircase, the sort of fire escape looking thing that used to come off the
Yeah,
side.
so the door will remain, they'll install a new door there. It was a non-historic door before, but so if we were harsh, we would say, well, that's a modification to the approval, it's an exterior modification, we need to do a full new public hearing, we need a full new file. And, you know, for such a small modification, staff feels like that's excessive, especially for a modification that is not significant to the building itself, it's a fire escape. And I also point out in the report, by removing that staircase, you can actually see some of the restored original windows better that the staircase used to block. And so, you know, arguably windows are more important than a fire escape architecturally. So fortunately, when we drafted the conditions of approval of the HRR, we kind of included a safety net that said, you know, we're not mandating any one of these alterations. And so if things outside of the applicant's control occur, you know, we don't necessarily need to do a full new public hearing. And so I kind of built in condition that gives us a way to not require a full new hearing, which is my recommendation. So there's just 2 questions here. Do you feel like this plan revision doesn't trigger a new HR approval? And then do you feel like it's still consistent with the criteria? And I point out the fact that it's not a character defining feature. And in fact, you're gonna make more character defining, like the windows more visible. We also have the applicant here, Emmerich, if there's any questions in particular on Zoom.
I have a question, was the staircase the same age as the building? Or?
It was in the original photo, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it was the same date, but the historic photo that they provided as part of their application included the.
Old.
Yeah.
Historic, but it's wonderful, it's part of the original design.
Good question. I looked back at the original photo and saw it.
Is that easily accessible for you, that photo?
It was in their application. I don't know if they got it from.
Will you show us, is that accessible?
Yeah, I was wondering if that was original, and I
They probably pull
I've
it.
always kind of assumed it was.
Yeah. Let
The
me,
other stairs were not, right? The other part on each end. They remove it. Story too.
But the staircase is not needed for any safety or codes or anything that way.
yeah, that's what they stated. Yeah.
There's-
So
We're keeping the landing because we want to have a smoking balcony or what's?
that's a good question. Well, it's original to the building. Would be. So this is the only photo we have of the rear in that very corner. Let me see if I can zoom in. See it right there. I don't know, there wasn't a circa, like an age provided, but they provided this photo to show some openings that had been filled. And that they were restoring new windows in the back that had been filled with CMU.
It says on the picture that it's a non-original.
Play shed that's in the
That's
back,
side.
that's older, I guess.
Side, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's, sorry. We're looking at this photo back here.
So behind it, that play shed, I believe is newer than the school
Yeah,
original.
so it's not terribly old, is it?
There may not have been old photos at the back.
Can you make that picture a bit bigger at all, the, we're talking about?
Oh, it says 1968.
Yeah, there we go.
So it's at least 50 years old.
And all of this, it doesn't, compromise fire egress from the second story.
If it did, they'd be including it.
That's like at the gym. Yeah.
But it's like the balcony kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just think about that big old box and how many ways are there to get out of it? We toured that thing and it was massive inside.
Yeah, they'll be submitting a building permit revision and Mike will review it for egress purposes, so I'm assuming they've been in correspondence with him about it.
Yeah, but how do we know that they're approved not to need this regress? You said they're going to talk to them.
They're gonna keep the doors that are there and put it.
Yeah, so
Over it.
usually you get your land use approval first before submitting full structural this is the normal process.
This is about egress too, though.
Sure, Brandon, I don't know if you're hearing us or can speak to your status with the building official on egress.
Yep, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks for reviewing this. Yeah, so as Jenny mentioned, our proposed approach was to make sure from an historic and planning perspective, there's no issue with this proposal. And then we are in the process of submitting a permit revision to the city, which would go through Mike from the building permit side to confirm our proposal, which is that there's no egress or life safety issues with the removal of the stair.
Why do you need the doors to remain even? Why couldn't you take it back to nothing there instead of putting?
We could, our proposal here is just to kind of do the minimum amount of damage to original structure to the building. So there's no issue. The county doesn't have an issue with keeping those doors there. And since there were doors there, the doors are not original, but since our understanding is that landing likely was originally part of the building, we're proposing to keep those and the doors.
Do you have any idea whether or not the rest of that staircase was original or not?
Yeah, I was thinking back as you all were talking. This is just from my research and understanding of the building. The current structure was built in response to a fire in the original school building. And so I think similar to how there are those fire escapes on the side of the building, I think this building was built with many means of egress when it was constructed in the 20s. And I believe there was some sort of egress stairs, including a chute. There's on the original plans, there is an annotation for egress chutes that would have actually provided egress from the mezzanine that's a little bit higher above this level. I can't say whether it's not clear to us whether the stairs that we're proposing removal or the landing is part of the original building, but the feature was part of the component was an original part of the design. One other thing to note is that the current stairs terminated at a concrete plinth that formed kind of the maybe bottom 4 risers of the stair. Our understanding is that certainly wasn't original. It was likely due to, I'm guessing there was corrosion in the original stair, which crept its way up from grade. And so at some point they had to cut off, the bottom 4 risers of the stair and install some sort of concrete plinth to form the remainder of the risers. So it's certainly an altered feature if it is an original feature.
Does SHPO have to approve this project after you're finished making these changes?
As a public building, we do have to go through a SHPO review process, and we're doing that concurrently. There is no objection thus far that we're aware of from SHPO.
Any other questions for Brandon?
But I have one question in the picture. So there's still a concrete wall there, it's like some of the story photos didn't have that concrete wall. Is that correct? I guess I'm asking us that doesn't preclude the staircase from being reinstalled. There's enough room.
Did you hear that, Brandon? If in the future you need the staircase, is there enough room?
Well, I'm just asking even if that stair, I can't tell the dimensions of this concrete wall that they built. That's a new wall, right?
From the photos, got it.
Yeah,
That
from the photos.
wall is replacing a wall that was more or less in the same position. It's actually a little bit further away from the John Gunn building as built. And so there would be the option. This new wall does not prohibit the ability to reinstall the stair in the future.
Building, but it's closer to the building, right?
The concrete wall is actually, it's a matter of like maybe a foot or two, but it's actually a little bit further away from the John Gunn building.
Oh, but they said closer. Okay. Right. Just asking.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good question. There certainly is an ability to reinstall that stair in the future. In fact, it was our original intention to do so before making this request.
So look at the picture, there's a window above the landing. Would the roof be? Look at the picture, the roof structure is already there, right? So it's almost flat.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's almost a flat roof. There was an original window above that opening. We are not proposing to install a new window into that original opening due to in 2000 or so, there was a seismic upgrade to the building, and that rear wall of the auditorium is a new shear wall. And so we are, as originally proposed in our historic resource review application, proposing 2 new windows to replace the two of the original auditorium windows, but that's the maximum amount that we're able to do with modern structural engineering requirements. So this drawing here shows that the original openings that won't be receiving new windows will be patched to match the adjacent stucco finish of the rest of the exterior walls.
That's what was already approved with the last approval, so the only change again is just the clouded area.
Right. Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah,
It won't be just indentions like there were a window, but stucco. They're actually gonna be smooth. The windows removed.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
You're gonna fill it so it's a flat wall, basically, not have the indention of where the window, like in this photo, it looks like there's a brick there, but it's set in a little bit.
Yeah, they actually will be set in a little bit, which was part of our original application review. And that is to allow the read of the original windows to come through. And it's also, I think, going to create a more achievable finish transition.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Thanks.
Yep.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Trying to trick anybody into thinking it was always without.
Yeah.
windows, so.
Yeah, I like that.
so there's two questions posed in the memo. This is kind of a weird one because it's quasi revision to a we would be considering a motion about those two items. Two questions posed. Basically, do you agree with staff's recommendations?
So staff's recommendation is that the staircase stays off, but there's a balcony there with a roof.
So the recommendation is that this revision is not enough to trigger a brand new HRR proposal. And that the revision meets the original criteria for HRR.
Well, take them one at a time. I would move that it does not trigger a new HRR review because I don't think it does.
We have a second. Second. You vote?
Aye.
Okay. And number two? I don't know how to think about this.
Remind me of the second one.
The second one is, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's talking about whether or not the revision meets the original criteria for approval. I included two of the relevant criteria, D and E. In my note there was more of the original windows will be visible. That was my kind of thought there.
I'm just going to make a motion to accept that revision.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I had a question for you, Brandon, out beyond the little balcony.
Yep.
It looks just like little metal thing. You're gonna press that up a little bit or?
The guardrail itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guardrail is going to be all new. What's there right now isn't code compliant, and so we are proposing a new guardrail. It's probably not terribly legible in this scale of a drawing, but it'll be nice, flat stock steel painted to match the rest of the building, and it'll match the other conditions, the other guardrail conditions around the exterior of the building.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
It's a loophole.
Good night. Yep.
Okay. Now we have the beginning of the 2024 developmental code amendments. Or the continuing of them, I guess.
Yeah, so, they're combing through this stuff and a few more questions I wanted to ask the commission on some things. Three things to
We're
talk
gonna
about.
we're gonna get a bunch of stuff to work on tonight. But that's okay.
Oh, well, like the code amendment, all that stuff will be probably after the joint meeting in March.
All right.
There'll be lots of coffee.
It's long. The document is long.
It's brutal.
You did it like it's this horrible thing.
Everybody's excited about these things.
Yeah, it always ends up being more than you think, because you start changing it, and I'm like, oh no, this changes that, and this changes this. That's codependence.
So coworkers on the planning commission and Kaiser, and that's all they do. They make any decisions on things that we do. Yeah, just go through codependence.
Wow.
How did you think about it? No?
Brutal.
Wow.
Okay, so, three things. The first two are fairly simple. So first of all, plan developments. So when plan developments were first a thing, at least in the modern, development code being seventies and on, it was by conditional use permit. Later on, around 1999, it was an overlay zone. So you adopt an overlay zone, just like you would a zone change, and then that overlay zone allows, but it does not mandate. That's important. It allows, but it does not mandate the flexibility that the plan development provisions provide. And that overlay zone just stays there. And it's possible that it just stays there and isn't used. And for me, you know, trying to track things over time, it has the potential to be kind of messy. And you know, having done this for a long time, you try to hope to keep things organized. Messy just takes more time to track things. And there's two overlay zones that exist that haven't been used. And I'll just point them out on the
And can I just ask while you're doing that, when you say hasn't been used, what does used mean in this context?
Oh, sure. So so let's talk about the Forest Trail subdivision here as an example. This one wasn't too long ago. So there was a bunch of wetlands in there. Forest Trail, that was the one that Rich Bailey did.
Oh, yeah.
Had a lot of happy neighbors, like a lot of them do.
Doesn't pretty sure.
There was the BPA in there, Westboro Way. So that one, in order to have the advantage of the plan development, which in the case of residential lets you reduce or eliminate yard or setback requirements, lot size requirements. And so it gives you more flexibility to achieve your desired density. So when you have wetlands and stuff, you know, it can really help. So the first thing you gotta do is adopt the overlay zone. So then that sits there. And then you can use the overlay zone with a development proposal. Typically, it's a subdivision, but it could be something else. And usually they're used right away. We have two that were adopted.
So I have the zoning map pulled up here too, if that's useful.
Oh, okay.
This shows the hatching, right?
Yeah, I was good, thank you. I forgot to throw it in the file.
Yeah.
So there is here, that's Forest Trail subdivision. Oh, there's three. In fact, I forgot about the Comstock.
Yeah.
I forgot about the Comstock
I
one.
didn't.
Yeah, really.
So there's the Comstock one, which is more recent. And they got their preliminary plat approval using the plan development standards, but they haven't continued that.
So I don't know if you could see at this level, but there is a hatching.
Yeah.
zoning.
There's.
So there's still the underlying R7, but then there's also this overlay on top of it. I just zoomed in so you could see it a little bit better.
And that one's not that old, most of us were here for that one. Now, the seal one, which is pretty big. That one, I think was around 2005 or so. And nothing's happened with that one, so it's just sitting there. And, you know, there's different parcels here, someone is gonna buy a couple and do a couple, I don't know. And then another one, that you may be familiar with, because we talked about it.
Where am I going?
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going.
Is,
Oh, the HP.
Society?
yeah, this.
Oh, there we go.
So this is gonna be the bluff that the city owns. This is from the famous earth removal case, for some of you who've been here for a long time,
Yeah,
from about 10 years
forget that
ago.
one either.
So it's basically a rock plateau. And there was a planned development, overlay zone established for what the developer owned at the time. Of course, the parcel, is larger than that. And so if someone wanted to use that, they'd have to apply to expand it. And so,
Is it the H Street project too? A plan unit development? Up the north eight?
Yeah, I thought that was.
Eagle,
Oh, what it's called now.
oh, yeah, we're getting all these new ones.
All these festive spots.
How's it haven't been built?
There's four. Yeah, so Boulder Ridge, yeah, that was another one. And this is the consideration, I don't know if I have strong feelings about it, but because we were looking at validity periods. And I had in my notes for something to consider in the future, whether there should be a time limit. So 10 years, for example, the overlay exists for 10 years,
Long time.
it is a long time, and then it
Can change.
and then it evaporates. Or do they just last forever? And then on top of that, if you like the idea of a time limit, then would you have that apply to any of the existing ones? Which would be kind of aggressive, because some of them could go away right away, and that may raise some concerns with the landowner. Or would it just be for new ones? Then you're not quote unquote punishing any existing overlay.
Well, you could do a third.
Yeah.
Yeah, third option would be to have the 10-year clock start for any existing one, now. And then no one can be too upset because at least they've got 10 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we implemented a time
And that
limit.
is speak, 10-year for the onset of development? Is that what you're thinking, or what is the 10-year
Well,
cutoff?
the 10 years is to basically to utilize, you would have to vest, you would have to apply for a development that uses it and build the development.
I like that third idea.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like if they're here forever, that's going to get awfully cumbersome.
Yeah, that's how it is now. It is.
So,
It is cumbersome.
I think that's
When they,
a lot of concern.
Forget about
yeah.
I was thinking of
yeah, we only
Asking
did,
Bill.
it's changed.
asking them if they'd be willing to have a cutoff.
They're not gonna sign up.
They don't care anymore. Like the seal, whatever.
Sign up, no.
I don't know, probably not.
Well, there's a required notice for text amendments that they'll get, but they're probably not gonna review it.
I know with the state, they had kitchen permits, and they didn't build it for 12 years sometimes. And we finally said, okay, this is just too old. Change the rules, mitigation design is crap, and we're just administratively closing it. But with a set time, it's better to have a set time than just, okay, it's been long enough. Or do it or don't.
Yeah, that's uncomfortably arbitrary.
Yeah.
Love uncomfortably.
We had raised some reasons. I mean, it just, the mitigation wasn't, for the wetlands wasn't appropriate to replace the wetlands anymore. It was old, such old rules. That's the thing is, it's old rules, so there's a plan unit development that's there forever. What they want to build there. Would you have approved a plan unit development there 12 years down the road? Or not? Or does that kind of thing not change anyway?
The
Everything
development
that has an overlay,
different than.
what does that mean?
Today.
Yeah,
If you get this special deal in 1998, you don't build on it until 2030. They'll look a whole lot different. I mean, they'll look different in just the time I've been in this building.
10 years is appropriate.
The world's a different place in 20
That's
years.
pretty long.
So 10 years from the date of the adoption of this ordinance, whenever that is, sometime later this year.
I don't know. 5 years, not better than.
Oh, bad news.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's either,
Do that and then it's
Yeah, I know.
an impetus for the building to get going and moving.
Do it or move on.
we'd have applications that were incomplete. We say, okay, you're gonna be turning a new application in, revising it. No, we're still working on it. So, don't kill it yet. After a while, it's like, okay,
I think 5 years.
come back in when you're ready.
I think 5 years is too short because it could be driven like right now by the economy. They're not developing the property because financially they can't because of interest rates and things that are out of their control. So I think that give them,
10 years allows cycles to occur, like the downs and ups.
More than 10.
Yeah.
So like that seal, you said, it's already been 10, right?
Yeah, I think that was 2005.
Before my time. It's a long time to give them 10 more.
Yeah, but
Didn't
I'm
happen.
wondering if it's easier just to say,
Yeah,
just gonna do 10 and then eventually those will all fade away.
Yes, it's a kinder approach while still having a cap,
Yeah.
which I think if the council is excited about it, would help with that part.
I guess my question for you is, have you talked to all of these property owners of these 4 planning and developments, and when are they still interested in having a planning and development overlay?
Well, I know Comstock and Boulder Ridge for sure.
Yeah.
They're still kind of in the picture. Now Seal. I've had occasional questions, but really nothing serious. In the 16 years I've been here, so I don't know how much ownership has changed. It's possible those people don't even know it's there. And then, the other one's city owned, so.
The other thing is, does the special zone travel with the property or with the property owner?
It stays with the property. Yeah, it stays with the land.
That seems like a bonus.
property value.
Well,
Yeah.
you were gonna say something. Keep talking.
No, I guess, I mean, like we've talked it, and we need to come up with a motion.
Well, I was just gonna say that, this bridge, albeit we fast. That we add 10 years to whoever is still there, but like these ones that have been around for 20 years. Talk to them and say, this guy's unit development overlay on this property. We could just make that go away, or do you care if it goes away?
But they're disparate owner. I mean, it's these are all different ownerships. Like, it's not one owner.
We're one owner at one time.
Yeah. So it's kind of, yeah, it's weird. There'd
Very
be no
messy.
way for it to get utilized because it'd take 5 property owners to cooperate.
It'll just sit there until it expires.
Just to
It's
say.
not as simple as they're making it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No way to clean up the mess.
You needing a motion on this?
No, I'm just getting general guidance. Cause we'll have this whole package of code amendments that you want.
All right. We got more on the building.
Okay, so the next one is a pretty easy question. So fence height. Except for the front yards, which is basically the front setback of residential lots that do not abut arterial streets. If they abut arterial street, a 6-foot fence is okay in the front yard. Otherwise, 6 foot is the normal maximum height for residential fencing. And Jenny and I have a combined experience of about 30 years. If you combine our experience. And both of us are like, 7 just seems to make more sense. based on the questions we get, seeing neighbors fight, and all those things, and it better aligns with the building code when the building code considers a fence a structure. And so that's why we're like, well, maybe we just make that maximum 7 instead of 6. But we of course, want to have a discussion about that to see if you're even open to that. And if you're not, that's fine. We want to at least talk about it.
I think bumping it to 7 makes sense. The one question I have is, I see you've got a reference to the ordinance section that covers barbed wire on top of 6-foot fences. Is that you can put barbed wire on a fence that is at least 6 feet, or it has to be 6 feet?
Oh, it has to
If
be.
you bump it to 7, are you gonna run into a? barbed
I think
wire?
I think it's at
Okay.
least, yeah.
Yeah, then you don't even have to amend that code. Super simple.
It's not allowed in residential. So, that's right, yeah.
Hopefully.
That's commercial. and
See, I don't think I've seen it.
Damn, I'm putting some on.
It's really.
Read the word.
Those few neighbors.
I was thinking, that's a great idea.
Fits down in the hiding hole.
Yes, it gets. I'm a,
Yeah.
A no,
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
Nose.
Yes.
I would be a yes, but
Yes.
I feel like it's,
So it's split.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think the purpose of fencing is to be high enough that generally people can't see over it, and I have a lot of friends who are taller than 6 feet, so.
I can say there's
The
a,
grade 2 of the lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have if it's a 6-foot fence, I've always wanted this question, so we have a bypass it now. And you make like, say, a lattice piece that goes over the top, that would be another 7, like say it's.
Well, that depends.
This is my question, does that make it a 7-foot fence, or you have a 6-foot fence with an additional piece on the top?
So going back to my early planner days in Klamath Falls, I've had this similar spiel where people want to have that lattice. And where we talk about this combined experience, that's one of those questions. So what I usually tell people is, okay, look, here's the maximum height. Now, I know you don't like your neighbor. There's a couple of things you can do. You can grow plants because we don't have a maximum plant height. You can have an arbor, I think that's what it's called, that's behind the fence, which is just posts with lattice for growing vines. Then it's just a structure. Or you can put the lattice on top of the fence, which is typical. We've never had a fence complaint that went nuclear, and so if nobody cares, then nobody cares. But it would make that form of fence more bulletproof from a legal standpoint, rather than, they put lattice on top of the fence and now it's 7 feet tall, now it's against code, so I don't like you, neighbor, so I'm gonna use that to throw my missiles at you. So it's that kind of thing.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think regardless, if we're getting into the code, we should firm it up so it's clear about lattices. Whether it's 7 or 6, we should.
Lattice counts, if there's a lattice exception.
Solid or not
It's
solid?
attached to your fence. I think it's part of your fence. As someone who put up a fence and included.
That's what I tell people, however tall the
Common sense,
height
right.
of the structure is.
And I think that's,
If you go to a big box store and buy a panel that becomes a fence, they're making it provisions for a 6-foot fence by the time you bury the 4x4 in the ground. Just
Remember that house fence
have a 20-foot fence next to me.
on Columbia
Second
Boulevard
Street, so.
with the new sidewalk, which is weird fence. It's, I don't know, 6 or 7 feet tall, but it's on posts that are
Oh, yeah.
3 or 4 feet off the ground
Oh, along Columbia Boulevard.
in the front yard.
A front yard or a backyard?
Good question.
Look underneath the fence.
Yeah.
I
Right.
see a lot of people pushing that solid fence closer and closer to the street. And it's not.
It's like homey, small town feel. It's
Doesn't impact the front yards. It's changing.
Right, but from another standpoint of crazy people that are too short to open their gate from the inside, if you're ever stuck in there and had to get over a fence, you're gonna wish it was shorter.
So this is side,
The other thing, just if
Riders.
you haven't mentioned it, I get a lot of questions, oh, I have a really big dog that's just gonna jump right over a 6 foot high fence. And I have to say, well, I'm really sorry, like, that's our max height, do you like your neighbor, like, what if you put lat, you know, I have to have this whole like back spiel where I'm trying to solve their problem and work with our code and.
Can they ask for a variance?
They can, but it's $560 for, I mean, that's. Way over the top for somebody who's just trying to keep their dog in and didn't even know, you know, that.
Maybe they shouldn't have bought the giant dog.
Do you wanna tell them that on the phone?
Well, I mean,
it's
you
like,
have to make the rules for everybody. I don't see 9 foot fence or 7 foot fence in other communities. I think it's pretty standard.
Well, and a question I suppose I would have, and this may be getting off topic, but if we're worried about dogs, if your fence goes up, do we have a regulation on how far in your fence can go? Like, can you have a kind of L-shape thing where you've got 6 feet vertical and then a foot or two going into your yard? We don't have anything saying you can or can't, or you can't do.
I've seen that with like deer wire, like chicken wire, where people are
You
trying
can
to.
do that, then your dog can't jump. As someone who
The dog guy.
grew up with a dog that was portable, I spent a summer once doing that to a whole yard worth of fence. It's quite the experience.
Thank you for that. I will keep that as a solution if they haven't considered it.
If necessary.
so my neighbor across the street got in trouble with Vic, I believe, cause he had a really tall fence. But it was cut into the slope, so it was 3 or 4 feet before to the top of the wall to his neighbor's property. So this side it looked like a 6 foot fence, and this side looked like a 10 foot fence.
That must have been years ago.
That sounds familiar.
It sounds familiar, but.
Years, yeah. Up 7 or 8 years, yeah, so. It looks the same, so I don't know what you get.
I mean, my yard is a 6 foot fence, but at the back of my property, because it goes downhill, I can look right into my neighbor's yard. I'm not interested, but it is what it is. We have a lumpy town.
And it's okay if you're split,
Yeah.
you know, that's just, we wanna kinda understand it and. Maybe we'll talk about this at the joint meeting, maybe not, we'll see.
I don't see any 8 and 7 foot fences in Hallmark movies.
And for what it's worth, I am less concerned about 6 or 7 and more concerned with just making it clear that the lattice is included. Just, you know, because I think that makes your code readable.
Makes sense.
Or if you don't want it included, just say that, but like be clear about what we're doing.
How about the next one? We talked about this last time.
Next.
Residential use on the first floor buildings of Riverfront District in Plaza Zone.
Okay. So I wanna back up a little bit. In zoning history for St. Helens. So that. As a reaction to the growth before the Great Recession. There was a new zoning district, you know, here. Called Old Town St. Helens. You know, there's a resolution that says we're not supposed to say Old Town or Oldie County anymore. But I am saying it in this case because it's a part of history. If you ever want to see that resolution, I'll show you. It was the most fun I've ever had in this line of work. There was, remember the SStat? I can't remember what that stands for. That was 2013, 2014.
That architectural review or something.
Sustainability Design Architecture Team.
There was a rant that occurred at the final presentation in the Columbia Theater. And one of the counselors acknowledged that rant and said, we need something. So we stopped saying Old Town or Oldie County. And so we drafted a resolution that says that.
Well, it was spelled differently and referred to differently all over the place. It wasn't consistent. And so that was the issue. It's like either call it one or call it the other. Otherwise, we just look like idiots.
So it didn't prohibit the language, it just was.
Make up your mind.
Oh, it's because of the,
Grant,
some people that didn't.
one person.
It was quite the rant. It was an effective rant.
And they called it oldie and townie.
You don't have the E at the end.
I know, well, my college would be in trouble then.
I don't even remember.
This sounds PENTRE.
But this resolution only applies in city limits, so
You could,
fine, as long as it doesn't move to, anyways, got off topic. There's interesting things that happen.
Riverfront District.
So that's why it's Riverfront District. In any case, so there was that zoning district created here, and then also the Holton Business District zone. And at the time, the city was concerned about the explosive residential growth. And, well, how do we preserve our historic, or excuse me, residential? How do we preserve our commercial areas from,
Our business district.
our business districts from being overwhelmed by residential use? And so there was a fairly aggressive stance that no residential use is allowed on the ground floor. Several years after that was adopted, we realized it really didn't make sense in Holton because there were so many single family dwellings that made them all hard to sell. It was like, well, this is being more punitive to the mixed use.
If the house burnt down, they'd be screwed.
So we eliminated that. Some of you may remember that. That was, well, 5 years ago.
Turn it into offices.
8, okay.
We can turn it into offices.
But where we're at right now, the zoning district here retained that no residential use on first floor, except for historic structures. So like the
Williams Cox House.
the Williams Cox House as an example, it's perfectly fine. So that's the brief history lesson with the detour on the Oldie County stuff. Last time we talked about, the allowance of it, and it seemed like the commission was receptive to the idea to allow that downtown to, for example, help facilitate the live work unit. And we just said, behind a non-residential use before, but given that you were receptive to it, it was like, okay, well, we need to kind of figure out a little clearer detail on that. And so I just had some ideas in here. I'm not, hell bent on any specific one other than we should have something. And so there's a couple things. One, should it be separate from certain streets? Or do you care if there's a residential use on certain streets? And I throw some examples out there. South First Street, the main thoroughfare, would you want a residential presence on the first floor there or not? And then the Strand, the plaza here. And if you don't care, then that's something we don't have to worry about. But the idea was, okay, well, if it's set back 20 feet from the right of way, then at least there's that separation. And this zoning district says that things are supposed to be 0 feet. So if the residential use in the building is set back 20 feet, then you're supposed to have a pedestrian plaza or something in between that and the right of way. Of course, we have a lot of pre-existing buildings. So a lot of this is going to be based on those existing buildings. Or you don't care. So that's one thing, and that kind of gets complicated. It depends how complicated you want it to be. So the next thing is restricting it to one dwelling unit. If we're talking about the work-live situation, that is probably a stronger consideration in my mind. Of course, you can disagree, that's fine. And then, what percentage of the floor space should be taken up? 25% is a little more aggressive, and I just started with that because this is the remaining area that's kind of aggressive on first floor residential, not allowing it at all. So there's the percentage portion of it. And then there's being integral to the non-residential occupancy and not a separate unit for rent lease space by a different tenant or owner, that really embraces and embraces and essentially requires the live-work unit situation.
I guess I need a little clarification because I thought when we were talking about this, I may have just misunderstood you. I thought with the new law about converting commercial properties to residential or allowing that we had to allow in some form.
That is that's a separate thing. Yeah, that's not a code we're proposing, that is a state law.
Like,
Do we have to allow people to live in Brooklyn? I'm confused.
the new law from January that you discussed, I thought that was wrapped into this, and that's why we had to allow some kind of living within the.
That would be separate.
But with that being said, I'm not receptive to it. I misunderstood you. I thought we had to make provisions somehow.
Oh.
But you're in favor of the bottom where it says the least complicated thing would be to maintain no residential use on the ground floor. It's zoning district.
That would be my first choice. My second choice would be that you have to, the one above it where you have to, there's no leasing, you would have to live. It'd have to be part of your
It'd be a
live
live
work.
work situation.
I mean,
So I interpreted all of those bullet points as being not alternatives, but all of them together. Am I being far too aggressive in that?
yeah, that they would all be,
Part of the code.
they could all be part of the package.
I see.
Now, the other thing that I didn't talk about here is one advantage of not allowing it, but allowing it for your historic structures is that helps to incentivize at least the historic structures down here. Like the house by the parking lot. That's
You know, the tiny cottage, but I think it does nothing to revitalize downtown if you're putting housing down here with no businesses. I mean, you can imagine somebody probably would love to convert the bank building that's for sale into their,
McMansion.
does nothing to bring people downtown.
Well, I just remember when rentals went up so high and we had all those empty storefronts down here, that people were living in them.
I think that's why you guys talked about, well, what about a dwelling unit behind the active.
Or upstairs or something else.
And that's where Jacob took that and.
Cause like the purple house down there, that's the law office now. Years ago, that used to be a coffee shop and gift shop on the first floor and they lived upstairs. And that would be a whole.
Yeah, and
thing.
upstairs is already allowed, right?
I mean, the advantage of staying as it is it's very clear. Once you do open that door, then you start to get into, yeah, it does start to get muddy. And this is a pretty narrow geographic area. I have a map that just shows the area being small.
And so just to clarify on that map, the as yet undeveloped riverfront area on the bottom right, is that included in this map? No. Okay,
No.
makes this much simpler.
This is the center polygon. I mean, honestly, I think it's safer to keep it as it is. But because you were receptive to it, I wanted to discuss it more.
I'd like to keep it as it is.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think particularly since that does allow people to have residential upstairs, I think if you want to have a scenario where your office, you live and work out of the same building, you can live upstairs and have an office downstairs.
Okay, well, that takes one complicating aspect of the code amendments away.
Good deal.
Cool, well, all right, if there's any more discussion, that's all I have for you this time.
All right.
Are we to the Jacob updates or are we to the Danny updates?
Anyone has anything to say about, or any questions about planning director decisions, temporary use? And seem pretty simple. The report for January.
Let's see. The things that I actually remembered to read it to see what I wanted to talk about. Final inspection for Broadleaf Arbor, everybody's favorite project. Have occurred. And so, but the full impact will not be felt yet. They're probably, so all the buildings have occupancy, they can have people move in. We believe that the whole complex is about 50% occupied in total. So it's full impact on the community for police, traffic, fire, but still not something to be felt yet. But thankfully, this many-year project, at least for getting it approved and built, is done. Another interesting thing to note was population growth. For years, our population growth was paltry. But then this last year, we showed a 3.5% increase, which makes sense given everything that's occurred. So that's kind of a change from what we've seen for a while. And that made me feel a little bit better. Peter Watts, who was the attorney that represented the city for the police station thing. I talked to him about the police station stuff, but he's been a city attorney for various jurisdictions, including the city of Scappoose. And so he has dealt with Portland State University and their population studies, and was kind of critical of them not taking criticism for their projections and being resistant to a community's input for that. And so he kind of warned me about it. And so that made me kind of nervous. But then seeing this larger number is like, okay, well, they didn't ignore, the growth that's happened here. So that's all I have to say on that part.
Two planning things. So we're kicking off our economic opportunities analysis next week. Jacob and I are having our first meeting on that, so more to come there. And then after 4 months of waiting, we finally got our ODOT Community Paths Program, our grant contract for this trail. And I was reading through it. Of course, I had a ton of questions. But one of the requirements, since it's a ODOT managed project, is that they require our match be spent up front. And it's not a huge match, and we're splitting it with the county and Scappoose. But I've never seen that. Usually it's like at the end of the project, or it's during the project, throughout the project. And I think they've been burned on other projects where then communities don't cough up the money and then the project's done, and so they are just getting it up front. Anyways, what that means for kickoff is we're in budgeting right now, and so it might be easier for both the county, Scappoose, and certainly us to budget for that for July, which would mean delay kickoff until then. So that might happen. That's kind of my plan. I talked to our finance director about that, and she was like, yes, please do that. So, yeah, anyway, so that might delay that even more. I know you were interested. What was that?
Was there a dollar amount to that or?
Yeah, it's about 40,000 split between two agencies, so it's like $13,000 for a $400,000 commitment on ODOT's end. So it's a good use of our money. It's just a question of planning.
We gotta add that to our budget.
It'll probably be professional services. Well, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
That's why we're planning.
Do you have any update on all of those businesses out there by the Burger King? Like when they'll be opening there at the,
Burger King's open.
no, there's a,
Fast Loop put up their sign yesterday.
oh, okay, I haven't been out that way. And if the Dairy Queen is gone or not gone?
I don't know what the heck is up with Dairy Queen. They got their land use approval. Has it expired by now? I know that they coordinated with the people building the Quick Lube business because they have some shared access. And they made sure that when they put that in, or when they put it in, I don't know if it's been installed yet. It's been a bit since I've been out there, but that they had the utility stubs, so they don't have to cut into the pavement. So I know some of that coordination is there, but what their plans are to submit their final development plans, I don't know. It's just weird.
Well, where they put their sign, it's like low on the pole, It's almost like there's another sign that's gonna go on top of it, so I
Maybe a
thought maybe
reader
that's
thing.
like. A reader thing.
Oh, fast.
Yeah, the fast loop is fairly low, I mean, there's a big section of the sign post
It is a
above it.
reader. It is a reader sign, but I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know.
All they have now is their fast loop part on it, they don't have anything else yet, so.
I think they're. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I can't remember which is on top, but it would make sense the reader is below. Sign.
It is weird with that slope though. Yeah, because when the Burger King sign went in, I'm like, this is different. Yeah, my head.
Low.
Okay. We have any proactive items?
We do. I had a meeting with, Erin, from Main Street. She's their president. That was because I tried to get on the agenda, city council's agenda, a request with the city. They referred me to the mayor, and the mayor's conversation I had was, if you're gonna get on the agenda, basically you gotta do it with Main Street. So, reached out to Erin, we had a meeting, and it went really well, actually. I think we could work well together. We both agreed that we might have a better reception within the community if we approach it from an educational piece in the beginning. And so we were thinking we would reach out to different organizations. I know that like Restore Oregon already has curriculum. She was gonna check into her resources. She suggested that she has to do her annual report to the city council from Main Street, and that we piggyback maybe on that as an idea
With a vacant storefront.
for the vacant storefronts. We did talk about architectural standards also. So, we may be able to coordinate with both of those. So it's kind of a starting point.
When's the Main Street report to the city council supposed to be?
I believe it's this month, the end of this month, or 24th, is that the next?
Yeah, next week.
Either that or the first part of March, so,
Okay.
and then we can certainly discuss it at the joint meeting, so. We both agreed that we could, have a lot of resistance to it, as you can imagine. And I'd like to see us somehow, instead of coming at it from penalties, maybe incentivize it somehow. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Still an advocate for a two-pronged approach. Where you have both incentives, I agree. You need to have that, but then also have the stick part of it too.
I think ultimately that's what you need. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to an idea where you start with the incentivized piece and then, a year later, you put the penalty piece in place, but my suspicion is that in the long run, you do need both to make it sustainable.
I think that's reasonable. Anyway, we agreed to meet again, and she is willing to present with me, and I'm willing to present to the city council when we get to that together, if that's the way the mayor would like it to happen. Doing enough fighting with everybody, we'll try to.
Well, no, you probably know all the players, but do we have listing of who all the different owners of property are?
The tax records wouldn't be hard to.
That would be useful to know.
Yeah.
Help with that too.
Nothing
It
else.
always surprises me that one that own different buildings.
There's a couple owners in town that owns more than one building, yeah.
Yeah, if nothing else, that tells us how many different owners we're talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I thought Main Street was working on a database for tenants too, to see. Not always the property owner, there's some operating businesses in there. It's like,
My impression is they've made some pretty significant progress on that, but I don't know if they're using the same. Excuse me.
She didn't realize that we were about to do this study.
The EOA.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
she thought that was really timely with what they were doing,
And
and
we haven't had any public meetings about it, so, yeah, with the stuff she's working on with Grow, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
I thought it was a positive meeting, could have gone different.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think they could help with both proactive issues possibly.
And I think the architectural standards. That can be some pretty heavy lifting. As a proactive item that the commission takes on. And it's probably an item. Best conducted with consultant help. But. Money.
Ready?
In my opinion on that whole architectural standards, I don't think we should go as far reaching as former commissioners here wanted to go. I don't think it should encompass the city, the entire city. I'd like it to encompass the historic district, not just the plaza, but the entire district and the new development. But I don't think that it should go across the.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't,
Pick a question you can handle.
yeah, and I think the point, the purpose, at least as I've understood it, of those discussions is to try to preserve and maintain an already existing character and various, we have some areas where that wouldn't be relevant.
I think that the riverfront district is very relevant and I understand that piece. And I've toured enough main streets to know how that works. But something that I have heard in the community for 20 years is the riverfront gets all the attention and there's no love for anything else. And Jacob and I have talked about the mid-century modern that exists in the Holton district and that maybe there's a multi-phase idea that celebrates that mid-century piece of our history as well. Jacob and I went to a thing when I was really early as a counselor, and I can't remember what they call them, when people's business sign hangs this way on their awning instead of flat on their building. And it showed it, they have it that way in McMinnville. So when you're walking down the sidewalk, you can see all the businesses and it's super welcoming.
Like blade signs?
Yeah, and they did a whole thing in Sandy and they did a thing in Sisters where they got some grants and got some in kind and did some makeovers on some storefronts. And all of a sudden everybody's like, well, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I remember when we did Petersons did the front of the Masonic building, wasn't it that building? And they did some art and some windows and all of a sudden people, I want my building to look like that. It's like, maybe there's a positive approach for the low hanging fruit on store standards that could bring tenant or landlords tenants and could realize the benefits of having a street standard. And I always think about the neighborhood standards, the crazy houses that get built.
Yeah.
But I've been told that all those info lots are done now, so too bad.
Close. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
I just think there's a multi-level, because I don't like to see, Holton is very
No, I think-
vibrant, and they definitely have a lot of contributions
No, I
to make.
Agree with that.
I just want to see them celebrated as well.
And I mean, as you said, Holton has an identifiable existing character. So,
But it's not the aesthetic of downtown.
no, it would be a different, yeah.
Right.
Well, instead, you could have the architectural standards that are
Appropriate for the,
different for the different areas.
Yep, exactly.
Some noted mid-century
right,
homes here in town, so I'm not suggesting, that's why that for far-reaching.
it's not, there's not one size
standard
fits all.
doesn't mean like it has to be a craftsman and it has to,
Yeah, it's not one size fits all, because we're not a one size fits all kind of town.
Does make sense to have a little more cohesiveness here. New area and old area.
Yeah.
Cause that keeps the flavor.
Yeah.
That people like.
Well, you don't want to be like the wrong side of the tracks, the right side of the tracks, it's like.
What do they do there?
Yeah.
Any for information items besides what you already did, Jenny?
By the way, did you approve the new tattoo sign in the district that they hung up? At Woodland Cottage, there's a new plywood sign.
Is it Woodland Cottage or the tattoo place?
It's the tattoo place on Woodland Cottage. They're working
She's-
inside
Are they
her.
moving?
Yeah, she just posted something on Facebook
the
the last 2 days.
No longer Woodland Cottage, she's
No,
now
it's
doing
another-
tattoos there.
It's another.
Somebody
tattoo
set up
place.
another.
Well, it's a different tattoo place, not the tattoo.
Different tattoo.
If it's a permitted sign, is it in the window?
Oh, it's a wood piece above the door.
Oh, okay.
So that Molly got, she needed to do something about her, so she went through all those hearings for her sign and so I went through it on my sign.
Yeah, no, treat everyone the same. I'll look at it.
Okay, I think we're adjourned.
Good job, Jim.
Neat.